Hi everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Paratalk. And on this episode, I'm joined by someone who knows a little bit about UFOs, because at the last count that I looked on social media, everyone's crazy for UFOs at the moment. So without further ado, let me introduce my guest this episode. We'll get the ball rolling. Ben, how are you?
Hello, Reeves. I'm very well, thank you. And in all modesty, you've chosen the right person to share this particular subject with on your show. As you know, I'm very, very knowledgeable, and I think I have a good understanding of this subject. And, I've been pretty obsessed with it lately because it's becoming more and more interesting. It certainly has over the past few years, and even the last couple of weeks, I found.
I think before we jump in, who is Ben Emlyn Jones, and how did he get into UFOs?
Well, that is a long story, but I can give it a brief précis. Well, I am a former hospital porter with 23 years of experience, and over the course of my life, I've come to realise that things such as UFOs, the paranormal, conspiracy theories as they are known, are not actually the fringe kind of frivolities that most people think they are. They are actually, I think, the most important issues affecting the world today, and gaining an understanding of these subjects has become a necessity. I've developed an interest over the course of my life. It must be something that I must have had a long time, because I don't have a very good memory of my childhood, but I do remember having books on ghosts and UFOs and things like that, so I must have had an interest at a very young age. In the sort of mid to late 90s, I took more of a serious interest in it and set up my website, Hospital Porters Against the New World Order, in 2006. I'm an author of several books, including 3 specifically about this subject, so people can check that out at my website, panwo, HBANWO, .blogspot.com.
I've been sort of dipping my toes into the UFO Twitter recently in the last sort of couple of months, and I've noticed that there's a lot of people are talking about what's going on at the moment with the world, with these balloons and other sightings that are going around. I'm wondering, are we sort of slowly approaching, I'm going to use the word disclosure, but is things being pushed in that direction?
That's a very good question. It really, really is. And I mean, on UFO Twitter, you're dipping your toes in there, so you can easily get them bitten off by sharks. It's like many internet communities. There's there's a broad diversity of opinion, and the discussions can get very heated and sometimes quite vitriolic. To be honest, I don't really know. I honestly don't know what's going on here. The history of the UFO subject, of course, it's as old as time itself. I mean, I think there's cave paintings thousands of years old that seem to depict what we today recognise as flying saucers and grey aliens. However, it's really since around the 1940s that things started to get really interesting, that the so-called modern UFO era began, which is actually where human culture and human society started to get a serious grip of this phenomenon. It's pretty clear that the governments, and all countries appear to be going along with this policy, governments decided that they would keep this phenomenon secret from the people. Which is very difficult because it is an overt phenomenon in the sense that it can be seen by everyone. It appears in every country in the world quite openly in front of people. Sometimes it's over large towns, not just sometimes individuals, sometimes large groups of people. But it's impossible to deny that the people are having the experience of perceiving these things, so that the strategy has always been official ridicule and denial. And that is actually a quote from a memo sent to Admiral Roscoe Hillencutter, who was the first head of the CIA in 1947. Now, this policy lasted 70 years and 5 months, and you may say, well, how can you time it that precisely? The answer is because it ended on the 17th of December 2017. It didn't end in the sense that the government are now telling us the entire truth about the subject, but it ended in the sense that the strategy for managing this particular phenomenon and the relationship it has with the people altered radically and very, very suddenly. And since then, I've been trying to get to grips with exactly why that has happened, for what purpose, and by whom. What's the ultimate agenda for this particular, and purpose for this particular change? The 70-year policy was overturned this so quickly and so radically. I think is highly significant in itself. Something is going on. Something very strange indeed.
I go back to my I was quite fortunate when I was a child, as I've recounted on other episodes of Paratalk, that when I was younger, with a friend and my father, I witnessed what you would coin the classic UFO sighting. It wasn't a fleeting, it lasted about 10, 15 minutes. So I was very fortunate. What they were, I don't know. That kind of sparked my interest and pushed me forward to start reading books and educating myself about it. Obviously, in later years, you read more serious books, and when you're younger, you buy your sci-fi magazines and stuff. So in the last few years, one of the original I would say one of the original UFO hunters, the collectors of pictures and documented accounts, was Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens.
Yeah.
Now, some people say, yep, he's a great guy, and some people don't agree. And especially the picture archive and his library of stuff that he collected over the years, some of those pictures are amazing pictures.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say, where I'm going with this, is we have a lot of researchers over the years that have done a lot of diligent work, put together cases and laid it out for people, documented it so that you can sit down and you can read all this literature and educate yourself about the subject. But you've also have, obviously, like with anything, you have a side of people that say UFOs are a load of nonsense, they don't exist, it's imagination, and people are making it up. They're misidentifying stuff. Now, we've got governments now that are coming out, a military complex, the governments are coming out and going, well, you know, there's something out there and we're not sure what it is. And it's all of a sudden, they're kind of coming around to saying, well, you know, and this immediately, for me, is a huge red flag. A huge red flag. It's like they've suddenly turned the tables. They've changed the name from UFO to UAP. That's the first red flag, because they don't want to be associated with UFO. They want to create something in their own guise to then say, well, this is what we're disclosing. No, that's UFO, that's different. It's the same thing. So where do you think they're going with that?
Well, the term UAP actually originates in Britain. It was actually first used in the 1980s. However, it has been adopted officially now in the United States. And the reason is because they don't want to be, as you just said, they don't want to be associated with the people who talk about UFOs, because I think there was a cultural stigma that still exists. Now, ironically, the term UFO didn't exist before the Robertson panel in 1952, and it was chosen to replace flying saucer for the very same reason. The thing is, we loonies, so-called, we culturally appropriated UFO. So now this is why the government has now decided on UAP. There's a red flag flying very high, very much so. The question is, though, what is it actually signifying? Is this... there's a number of possibilities here. There could be the truth embargo, which is what I just described, the cover-up, which existed for 70 years, or more than that now, is now in the hands of people who want to end it. This is the happy possibility, the best case scenario. It is now being controlled by people who want to end it, and the changes that have come since 2017 is basically it's partly a social experiment and partly a conditioning process to get people to accept the reality without shocking us all too much. In which case, this process will continue. And there is something a bit theatric about what's been happening since December 2017, actually. As if these things are being, enter stage left this, exit that, things like that. Another possibility, of course, is that the keepers of the truth embargo, and truth embargo is a term coined by Stephen Bassett, an exo-politician, is that they've decided to change the strategy in order to bury the secret even deeper. They've decided, well, the one we have now is not working. We need to try and bury this secret deeper by confusing people with false information, putting people out in the media to talk about crazy stories that no one will believe and muddy the waters and things like that. That's another possibility. A third possibility is this is an inevitable process that comes as the result of a change in the phenomenon itself. So this infernal triangle between the government, people, and the UFO phenomenon it's weighted very much on the side of the UFO phenomenon corner, which is basically dragging everything down. And so in other words, there are more tic-tacs now than there used to be, and they're appearing more often, and more and more pilots are seeing them. Therefore, this is the inevitable response. That's the third possibility. I mean, maybe there are other possibilities too, which maybe we can add to.
I've got a few notes on my notepad, and I made these notes because they popped into my head a little while ago, and I thought, well, I'll be speaking to you soon, so I'll write it down so that I won't forget. My first thought was these shoot-downs are nothing more than theatre. They're there to show the public that the military is able to intercept things and take them out if they're over their airspace, and therefore the public will then, we're safe, no problem, let them get on with it. They know what they're doing. The other note that I made was that the reason that this is happening is twofold. Let me just go back even further. You've got I'm going to go to Balloon Gate, okay, because I just want to say something. the first excuse was the reason that these balloons have now only been noticed is because the equipment they've got is not designed to look for things so small at such high altitude. And for me, that's that I can't really believe that, because if you're saying that, then the equipment you're using isn't that sensitive, and therefore anything else that's around the same size as a balloon traveling up into the stratosphere or however high it is, for example, a UFO, you're going to miss it. You're not going to see it. It's not even going to appear on radar. It's not even going to be there. But my second point, my B side to that, is that maybe, and this is all hypothetical, this is just my opinion, this isn't just thoughts, maybe that this is a rollout for something that's coming in the near future, that we're being conditioned, things are being sped up, and we're being conditioned en masse for something that's possibly coming. The only thing I can say is that maybe not all UFOs are nuts and bolts. What do you think about that? Maybe not all of alien craft, not all of the stuff that people witness and see, even having experiences with greys or whatever, maybe they aren't in the material world, as in the sense of like us, flesh and blood, and nuts and bolts. What do you think of that?
But they're made out of a different substance. It's possible. I mean, to answer your earlier points, now, if you're speaking specifically about Balloon Gate and what everything's been happening this month, well, last month now, it was a very, very strange couple of weeks indeed. I wish I could give you a final answer on exactly what's going on here. I really wish I could. This, in a sense, is an escalation and, again, a strange diversion of the process that's been going on since December 2017. It's a really strange diversion. It has an element which can only be described as surrealist. I mean, watching the news when this broke out, I could hardly believe what I was seeing. I was seeing someone like the Minister of Defence for Canada, the head of the National Security Council, the head of NORAD, talking about things which they describe as objects. And the only word they will use to describe them is objects. When someone says, well, are they a balloon? They say, we're calling them objects for now, and there's a reason for that. They won't confirm what they are, but at the same time they say things like, well, this one is cylindrical, it's silver in colour, it has no obvious means of propulsion or lift. They describe its various properties, and then they say, but it's an object, we don't know what it is. And by the way, we've shot 3 of them down. This is a very serious matter, because this is the first time since 1942 that live ordnance has been detonated in anger in the airspace of the United States.
I heard that one of the balloons that was shot down over, I think it was Alaska or Canada, in that area, in that vicinity, was a $30 balloon for a ham radio set hobbyist that they could increase their signal range. And the balloon basically went off and it floats around in that area and people can connect up, get connected and boost their signal in some way. But the thing was that when you look at how much that missile cost, was it $500,000?
$500,000 each, yes.
That fired, that blew up that $30 balloon, and you're blowing up things and shooting them out of the sky and then admitting, we don't know what they are, but we're still blowing them up.
Yeah.
That's once again, that's a massive red flag to me.
It is.
That's a massive red flag.
Another red flag is that there is actually a witness on the ground. I mean, these balloons are the first, whatever they are, and they say they're not balloons, they're objects, because they're actually correcting the reporters who call them balloons. These objects, 2 of them crashed in a very remote area indeed, basically subarctic North America. Now, there's actually a witness on the ground to one of them, and he's a guy who works in an oil drilling facility on the Alaska North Slope. And he has been watching, he said for about 3 days, there were planes flying in and out, helicopters, the military commandeered the local airfield and things like this. And he's actually filmed this stuff and put it on TikTok. Mm-hmm. Now, a $30 ham radio balloon wouldn't cause that kind of response in terms of a crash retrieval, because it's the sea. It crashed on the sea, but the sea at that time is frozen over, so it's crashed onto ice, basically a plane of ice. President Biden himself actually said, "Oh, these are just it's a recreational balloon, I think," and something like that. Again, that's a red flag. Doesn't make sense at all. On the subject of what you said that was going on, you mentioned that this may be some kind of show of force by the military. I think you said that was one of your...
Yeah.
There are many ways in which the US military can do that without generating this rather strange scandal. For example, you can carry out exercises off the coast. It can have displays, displays in public events and pageants and things like that. This is a very strange way of publicising your own military might. A very strange way indeed. The same goes for the idea that it was some kind of experiment gone wrong from Area 51. Again, you don't have to come on stage and say, "Oh, we found an object. We don't know. We're not going to tell you what it is. We don't know." It's almost like they were teasing us. Why don't they just lie to us, Reeves? Why don't they just not tell us or lie to us? I mean,
yeah, I when I heard the ham radio story, I immediately saw the press cutting from Roswell and the weather balloon. It was on those same lines of, well, you're making stories up again and when you tell people what you're going after, you're kind of skirting around the actual what it is to not say what it is, to say what it is, and it's you're putting it out there that that the newspapers are going to take that and they're going to run with it and they're going to create their own stories from that. And it's whether you're trying to panic the public or condition them to become used to this kind of stuff. And that's why I kind of moved on a little bit from that and ask you, if these are aliens in real craft flying around the planet, do you think that that's what every one of them is? Or do you think that there's something else going on here? Because I have got a theory. Well, it's not my theory. It's a theory that's out there that it could be possibly something else. But I wanted to hear your thoughts first.
Well, I wish I could give you a firm answer on this, and I can't, unfortunately. It's possible that these are basically extraterrestrial artifacts, literally manufactured by non-human hands. In which case, we know that these things have been around and about for a very long time. Obviously, some of them do seem to be immaterial. So, I mean, they've been compared to ghosts and things. You was talking about some of them might not be flesh and blood and nuts and bolts. But obviously, they do leave behind a physical trace. They leave behind objects such as wreckage. It appears to be made out of some kind of metal. There are biological beings that appear to leave footprints and things like that. You can touch them, things like that. It seems to be a combination of both. It's kind of like maybe contradictory. If they are that, then obviously the people who manage this particular subject seem to have changed their minds over how they present it. And they are actually giving the public enough information for us to ask more questions and for us to deal with, in a sense, it feels like they're almost encouraging us to demand more information on this subject. That's how it feels.
I've been sort of learning a little bit about this theory that's floating around at the moment, and maybe it's a theory they kind of go full circle. Somebody says something, somebody comes up with an idea, it's out there, people talk about it, and then it goes quiet, and then it comes back again. And I'm kind of thinking maybe not all of them, or maybe all of them. I don't know. Maybe this is a product of the planet itself. Maybe the planet itself being, if it's a conscious thing, Mother Earth and all that. Maybe this is a product of something that's the planet is manifesting, and that it's more of a warning than anything else. And when we have these experiences, that these objects are able to tap into the public consciousness and manifest in a way that we can perceive them as material, flesh and blood things, rather than they're only there like that for a while. Because when you go into the realms of UFOs, you always say, well, he was there 1 minute and then he was gone, or the UFO was there and then it vanished. And you think, well, are they popping in and out of reality? Or is there something else that's manifesting? And we are, as we're like little radios, we're tuning into that and we're experiencing that for that short duration. So I just wonder what your thoughts were on that.
That's a possibility. It is. Indeed, it could be that our very presence and the presence of our minds and consciousness kind of almost encourages these things to appear. And it may have some connection with the Earth as well, Gaia consciousness or whatever it might be. It could be that these things come from the Earth. I mean, it could be that being so huge, and indeed parts of it are still unexplored, there may be perhaps creatures that have evolved on this Earth with us, but they've kept their distance from us. In other words, our paths have never crossed. That is a possibility. They come through wormholes from other dimensions or from distant planets. It's difficult to know. I mean, they do appear to have a physical presence. They appear to, like I said, they can be seen. They reflect radiation, light radiation, and radar. They produce solid objects and beings, the footprints and you can touch them and things like this.
Mm.
It's a tricky question, Reeves. I don't have all the answers to that. I mean, there is another possibility I've thought of, which I've been contemplating, actually. Everything that's been happening lately in the last few years, including what's happened in the last couple of weeks, is actually a prelude to, as you said, it may be they're preparing us for something else. But what they're preparing us for may be a hoax. They may be preparing us to lie to us and tell us we're about to be invaded by evil aliens. And the solution to this problem, which will be essentially it'll be a manufactured sense of fear and outrage, and to which the government will then present a solution which the public will accept when they wouldn't otherwise, as a solution to the problem, which would be possibly more internationalism and authoritarianism in global politics. That is a possibility. We need to be on our guard against that, if that appears to be the case.
It leads me into another question I have. We always look at these, we say aliens are coming here, they're going to overtake the planet or something like that. A genetic war. Maybe you've got a couple of factions of aliens from different places, and maybe we are a very useful product to them. Maybe they want something from us. Maybe they want our DNA or something from us, and that we're a sort of a kind of a product to be fought over. And maybe we're caught in the middle. Maybe we're piggy in the middle. We think we're the important ones, but we're not. We're the cattle, and they are fighting over us. And that's why governments around the world that have agreements with certain factions, certain groups of these, wherever they're from, maybe they've given the okay to say, well, if you give us your technology, if you give us certain technologies, then you can abduct so many people pro rata and do your genetic whatever you need to do. I know it's an old story, but it's kind of, I don't know, I just keep thinking like that. Is that a possibility?
It's probably not. The reason I think it's not likely is that if the idea of a secret deal with the aliens, as you say, it's quite a common idea. It's been around for quite a long time. But in any such negotiation with these aliens, we humans wouldn't have an awful lot to bring to the table. We wouldn't really have much leverage, would we? I mean, the extraterrestrials have been doing these abductions, probably since prehistoric times. Certain there's in mythology and legends of many cultures, we talk about creatures, they sometimes call them trolls and fairies, just snatching you from your bed and taking you away, doing all kinds of horrible things to you. When the descriptions come out of these trolls and fairies, they tend to resemble the very aliens that we see today, we call aliens. Now, they don't need our permission for that. They don't ask our permission. They do it, and there's nothing humans can do to stop it. This may be one of the reasons that the government are keeping it secret, because if they told us openly, they would have to admit that these aliens basically do what they like. They fly in our airspace, they kidnap people, and sometimes, usually they return them, but sometimes they don't. I mean, the new David Paulides film talks about people who are abducted and disappear permanently, and they can interfere with nuclear weapons. They can, if necessary, disable our nuclear deterrent. The government has to come up and say, look, this is happening and there's nothing we can do about it. Governments, politicians don't like admitting they're powerless, but in this case they are. So the idea of a secret deal really doesn't make a lot of sense in that situation. It'll be a bit of a Melian dialogue. We'd be sitting there saying, well, we will now, but there's nothing you can do about it, is there? They always say, be careful what you wish for in case you get it. The truth about this whole subject may actually end up being very, very distressful. I mean, it could be that we are literally the livestock on some kind of intergalactic barnyard. We are farm animals for these creatures.
I was going to say.
It could be that you mentioned something then. Yeah. Maybe we're currently our farmer's market, and it could be that as bad as that. If that's the case, would you want to know, or would you be grateful to the people keeping that secret from you?
As we are rapidly approaching the end of this episode, I was going to jump into second gear, and I was going to start to ask a question to you. Let's say tomorrow the aliens or whatever they are, they're real and it's a thing and they've been here forever, okay? And everything that was told to us and all the lies that were told to us and all the people who had their careers destroyed, because there are people out there that have done some serious work that have had their careers destroyed through ridicule.
Yes.
The governments are very sorry about that, but that's the way it is. How do you think the greater public, how do you think that they would take that?
Funny enough, I actually wrote a book about this very subject. It was a fictional. It's called Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure. Available at all good bookshops now. Price £10, by the way. It's about this. It's a fictional story about this very subject. If I was writing that book today, I would write it slightly differently. I mean, I believe there would be a large contingent of the public who would be pretty indifferent to it. I've come to realise that there are a large number of people who really don't react at all to these kinds of things. They appear to not to have an awareness of anything beyond their own basic material needs. And I mean, I don't want to sound demeaning there. This is what I've observed with large numbers of people. There would be a number of people, including myself, and I think probably you, who would be delighted by this. We'd be inspired. We'd be excited. We would give us a bit of a lease of life. And of course, we'd have so much to write about and so much to talk about on our radio shows. My book would become an overnight bestseller, things like that. And there would also be, I think there would be another portion of the population also, probably about the same size, who would freak out. They would become very afraid. And so they would probably, then you could see things like riots, suicides on a large scale, things like that. That's how I think people would react to that situation.
To add to what you just said, you say people would freak out and kind of not want it to be true or not understand what's going on. I also think how it would impact religion and how it would change. I mean, you could imagine the little alien man comes out and says, well, you're a byproduct of us, a product of what we have set. So I'm thinking, do you think that they would become the new messiahs? Like, little Timmy's got a bad leg. Can you fix it for him? Because you're the alien and you've got the technology. Would it sort of turn into that?
It depends on the religion, because religions have a very, very, very wide variety of different ideas. I think Hinduism and Islam would probably not be affected very much, really, to be honest, because they already have this kind of concept within them. The Muslims believe very much in the jinn, which they occupy a parallel world, and they're made of smokeless fire, and they're very much like how some aliens are described, the jinn, and there's good and bad jinn, etc. The Hindus believe in an entire parallel world of gods of various kinds. I mean, there's thousands of these gods, so it's incredible. Now, Christianity would have to adjust quite a bit, I think. I don't know about Judaism, but Christianity would have to adjust its beliefs. But the idea is, I mean, a lot of people think that the church would fall if we had open alien contact or disclosure. I dispute that, because the church survived the blow dealt to it by Charles Darwin and the theory of evolution. The church opposed it, first of all, and said it's all nonsense. Then they sort of went into the bargaining phase in Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's scales. It was denial, then bargaining, then shock, denial, bargaining, then eventually acceptance. Today's Christian churches live actually quite comfortably alongside. I mean, there are exceptions, and you go to some little village in the Alabama or something, you'll see some guy with a shotgun who says it's all nonsense still. But generally speaking, most Christians accept evolution, and they've adapted it into the theology and catechism of the church. They say, well, God created the earth. He didn't do it in 6 days. Adam and Eve were just symbolic, not literal, and things like that. And I think probably the church would find some kind of cop-out again. It's very, very similar, I expect.
Interesting. That's interesting. I think that it's like anything. If you have something like that's monumental, I think that you'd have to adapt. Things would have to change, and you'd have to sort of carry on living your life, but you would have to adapt in some way and look at things from a slightly different angle. But anyway, so finally, as we're rapidly approaching the end, find out from you and get your idea of where things are going at the moment with this whole UFO debate, and when do you think the full disclosure is going to happen? Is it going to happen or not?
Oh my goodness me! I've got a bet. I took out a bet in Ladbrokes or William Hill. I've got the slip somewhere in 2015 that it would happen within 10 years. I actually got odds of 500 to 1. I put a tenner on, so if it happens, I'll get £5,000. The odds, funnily enough, the odds are dropped. I think they're only offering like about 30 to 1, 40 to 1 now. So that's interesting, isn't it? Because I trust bookmakers more than I trust academics, because their livelihood depends on the statistics. It's not just all, well, I can say this and say that, and I get paid the same. When will it happen? I don't know. I mean, what I think the last couple of weeks taught us is that a week is a long time in exopolitics. which means that things can change very rapidly. Disclosure, when it happens, may burst out suddenly with no warning. It may literally just happen. And in the same way, these very strange things have happened over the United States and Canada. It could literally be that quick when it happens. And I suppose we have to be prepared for it. That's the purpose of what I do in terms of my writing and in terms of my online activism, is that. It's about presenting information, creating awareness, creating a community as well of people who will be ready. Because I think there's a large number of people who have come into ufology. I call it new ufology since 2017. A lot of them is because of the revelations of December 2017. And there's a time when we may have to take a leadership role. When if should disclosure happen, people who've been laughing at us for decades will have to turn to us and look for advice and for leadership. I mean, Sam Harris, the skeptic, has effectively admitted that.
I sometimes think that. I think if they turned around and suddenly the following day they said that they're here and that they're going to be part of society or just accept them and that, whatever. I think there's a lot of my mates that turn around and go, what do we do, Reeves? And I'm like, well, you just go on and carry on your life as you can't change anything. You just carry on as you are because, accept it as they're there. They've always been there. I think it's an unknown, isn't it? It's definitely an unknown.
First thing I would say to them is, well, the first thing you do is apologise to me for taking the mickey for so long. But then
Well, I think I've been scoffed at a few times. Yeah, you learn to sort of just, turn the other cheek and just go, okay, fair enough. I've said my bit, and if you want to have a joke, and that's perfectly fine. That's fine by me. Anyway, Ben, so thanks very much for joining me on this episode.
You're welcome.
It was certainly a bit different. What have you got in store for the next few months? Because the nicer weather's going to come. Are you going to be going out doing some of your UFO conventions?
Yes, I'm going on tour several times, actually. I have several speaking engagements, including the Encounters Conference at the end of next month. That's in Southampton. And I'm speaking also a couple of other places, such as the Dorset Earth Mysteries Group in either July or August. I can't remember. And I'm also attending several conferences as a delegate, such as the Glastonbury Symposium and the Awakening Conference in August. So, yeah, I'm going to be out and about. So I'll probably see you there if you want to come to some of these places.
Yeah, I might pop down to a couple. I'm also trying to organise a ghost hunt as well at the moment. So it's all sort of. I think that I've got to make the most of the warm weather. After last year, we had a sort of few weeks of really, really nice weather, and I always kick myself for not, because it's like anything. The weather's really nice, and you think, oh, it's not going to last. So I don't going to plan anything because it's. 2 days' time, it's going to be pouring rain. But we had a couple of weeks of really hot weather, and I'm thinking, I decided that this year, if that happens again, which is likely it will, maybe it'll be for a bit longer, and then I'm going to take the initiative, and I'm going to go, right, off I go. I'm going to have it ready to go, ready planned. So off I go. But so we'll have to wait and see on that. Anyway, Ben, thanks very much for coming on.
You're welcome.
I'm sure you'll be back a little bit later in the summer after you've done your talks, because I'll do a catch up with you. Hope everybody enjoyed that. And a bit of UFOs, you can't beat a bit of UFO chatter. Till next episode, talk to you soon.
Thank you very much, Reeve. Thanks for everyone for listening.